All right, well, depending on the time zone, either good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Really appreciate you joining. This is a topic that's very near and dear to our heart, which is the digitization of in-store media, talking about some predictions and overall insider tips for 2023. And we're really appreciative that you made the decision to join us. By way of introduction, I want to start with introducing your panelists, one of them who is me. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Mike Pollock. I joined Grocery TV in early October as Chief Revenue Officer. And just, very quickly, my background, I spent a little over 2 decades kind of surrounding this space. I spent my first 10 years really selling and working across in-store advertising, primarily analog, at a company called News America Marketing, which is now known as Neptune Retail Solutions. Spent the next, call it 8-9 years, building our digital media business. And so when selling in-store, I really kind of learned the efficacy and the value of what in-store provides. On the digital side, saw the efficiencies and value in terms of targeting that digital provides, along with some of the warts and some of the challenges that kind of persist within the industry. And then spent another 2+ years at a mobile ad tech company. And so I've kind of come to Grocery TV with a lot of enthusiasm around what this space can be, and have been able to kind of surround it from a lot of different elements of having worked with brands, agencies, and retailers. And joining me today is also Nolan Johnson. And Nolan has been with Grocery TV for nearly 5 years. So he's been one of our early employees. And so I think a lot of you will likely know him because he's been working across the brand and agency ecosystem and partner ecosystem, for nearly half a decade at this point. And so you'll hear from him in the second half of this presentation. In terms of our agenda today, we're going to talk a little about the physical stores and ad medium and kind of talk about what are some of the contributing factors as to why this is happening, why now, and what that means. A few digital in-store media predictions, some of the things that we kind of see happening over the course of the next year or two. And then Nolan will walk you through just some tips of the trade around how to plan effective digital in-store media campaigns. And then we'll spend the last 2 or 3 minutes, with a quick tease around what to expect from Grocery TV, but we tried to keep this way more focused on the industry overall. And then hopefully we'll have an opportunity, if time permits, to do some Q&A. And as many of you will see within Zoom, there's a Q&A button at the very bottom. So feel free to type in your questions, and Micah, who will operate as our moderator, will help circulate them to us towards the end. So I always like to start with, kind of where's digital in-store coming from? And I think you have to start with looking at some of the challenges that are pervasive within the overall media industry. And none of these will be surprises to you, because I think each one of these topics have dominated the headlines and dominated probably a lot of time that you're spending, over the last several years. But you start with deprecation of third-party identifiers. We've heard for years about the third-party cookie going away, and certainly, mobile identifiers through the changes that Apple has made. But ultimately, what that's created is increasingly a challenging time for brands and agencies to be able to target, their audiences, as effectively as you could when third-party identifiers were more pervasive. The second piece, which is not a new problem, is just challenges around brand safety, transparency, viewability, and ensuring your branded content can live cleanly and you can feel confident in terms of where it's ultimately being delivered. And then most recently, we've continued to see kind of the proliferate, or the decline, I would say, in TV ratings, especially on the linear side, the rise of CTV. But what I'd also say is kind of the rise of hard-to-reach audiences. Our world has become a lot harder in trying to find the audiences that we want to be able to target based on some of these macro level changes. And all of that at some level has kind of contributed to the growth of retail media, which I think has been created at some level to solve some of the problems that we just discussed. And if you look at the growth, in 2022, according to Insider Intelligence, retail media will represent almost $41 billion in overall spend. And it's going to grow by another 50% by the end of 2024. And this may be conservative based on what we've seen. A lot of people are calling or referring to retail media as kind of a third wave of digital advertising. If wave 1 was search and wave 2 was social, retail media is quickly becoming that third, and it's growing at a faster pace than any of those other channels, historically. And so if you look at kind of what's driving that growth, I tend to oversimplify things a bit, but I look at it in terms of 4 different buckets as far as the value that retail media is providing. The first is precision targeting, really the ability to be able to identify something about a shopper, whether it's what they're buying, what they're searching for. It's all tied to a digital identity, and it's become really easy to be able to then reach those audiences, across retail media platforms. Those audiences are quite large. So if you look at the number of people that are shopping online, both on and off property, they've got massive reach. Definition of contextually relevant for especially on-site targeting. You're reaching shoppers in the buying mindset as they're about to make a purchase or as they're browsing. So there's a lot of relevance in terms of when you're reaching them. And then from a measurement perspective, I think what retail media has always provided is this promise of true closed loop attribution. And so that's really helped kind of drive the crazy growth that I showed on the subsequent slide. But our central thesis, our central hypothesis is at some level that the one thing that retail media platforms have struggled with so far, what they've really ignored, is the potential of the physical store. The reality today is that depending on the vertical, anywhere between 85 to 90% of total sales still happen in the physical brick and mortar store. So you've got a massive amount of purchases happening in store, whereas the focus has been primarily to be able to reach those shoppers online. What you also have is an average trip frequency. The average household is shopping in a grocery store 1.6 times a week for an average of 43 minutes per shopping trip. So now what you've got is you've got this built-in reach with really big audiences. You've got built-in frequency, almost frequency capping with a little under 2 shopping trips per week. And because of the 43 minutes, you've got attention and you've got dwell time. And so it's become quite a captive way to ultimately be able to reach shoppers. Oops. But the store is not new, but it hasn't traditionally been really thought of as an actual ad medium. And I think this image at some level illustrates why. The reality is this is what in-store advertising for a really long time has looked like. And so it's been low impact, low visibility, static signs, really long planning cycles because you have to print and then ship and then install these campaigns. So you're talking about 12, 16 week planning cycles. Often you have to negotiate kind of the signage retailer by retailer. And so it's been primarily promotion based. You don't have a ton of opportunities to be able to really build a brand with kind of static in-store signs. And so it's been a way to be able to kind of either capture short-term purchases or be able to drive kind of the conversion of a price point. Oops. But we kind of look at what's happened within the out-of-home world as really inspiration to what we see happening within the in-store world. Digital out-of-home is the oldest medium in the United States in terms of how to reach audiences. And what's happened is digitization, automation, improved targeting has become a game changer for out-of-home. And that will absolutely continue to apply to the store. But what I did want to talk about quickly is why now? Why, there's been attempts at digitization in the past. Why is right now that time for overall transformation? And there's a few simple realities. One, hardware costs have continued to decline. So it's easier to place screens and, to help modernize the look and feel of the store. Software has become way more sophisticated and easier to deploy, which then results in more centralized planning and execution of actual media campaigns. And that's also allowing for now all of a sudden digital in-store to be transacted through demand-side platforms and be bought just like every other ad channel. And so what you're seeing now looks a lot different than what I was showing on the prior slide. All of a sudden in-store media, digital in-store media today is high impact. It's really large formats. It's got the opportunity to be dynamic, right? To be able to change the campaign based on real-time triggers, whether it's the weather, whether it's the time of day, whether it's a sports score, whether it's what's happening from a competitive perspective for a particular brand in an individualized location. It can all be automated and transacted through programmatic demand-side platforms. You can target audiences now instead of just being able to target stores. You can target audiences based upon who you're trying to reach, and it's designed for true storytelling and brand building. This is no longer shopper marketing just around a price point. You have an opportunity to be able to be really creative with how you reach those shoppers in that buying environment. So if you go back to the 4 kind of principles that were driving retail media, and you compare in-store retail media, compares really favorably. You start again with targeting. Well, now you've got a future-proof way to be able to target where no digital IDs are needed. And it's really precise. If someone's walking into a Kroger, they're a Kroger shopper. There's not a lot of guessing. You don't need a cookie to be able to identify what that audience looks like. And then even for kind of non-contextual audiences, you've got a really good understanding that these are heads of household and often probably the primary purchase decision maker that's walking into these stores. From a pure reach perspective, in-store actually far surpasses online traffic. And you've got the ability to be able to connect with hard-to-reach shoppers. And on the following slide, I'm going to show you exactly what those audiences look like. From a contextually relevant perspective, again, you're walking into the store. This is where, from a CPG perspective, 75% of brand decisions are made. 86 to 90% of purchases are being made. And again, you're reaching those heads of household. And then from a measurement perspective, you have all the same tools that you can use to measure online. You can measure within store, and you've got these clear advantages around brand safety, transparency, and quality, and some of the things that we spoke about, because you know exactly where the ads are running. So if we unpack a couple of those points, I'll start with overall size of audience. At Walmart in particular, you've got 65 million more people walking into a Walmart on a monthly basis than those that shop online. If you look at a Kroger with their 41 million audience shoppers on a monthly basis, you've got more people walking into a Kroger than watch the #1 rated non-sports TV show. So you're talking about massive, massive audiences that far surpass what's happening online. And again, that's somewhat been ignored, to date. And then if you think about it from a measurement and targeting perspective, when most people think of in-store, because of its proximity to the product, especially for CPG and endemic brands, they kind of think about the bottom of the funnel and they think about conversion. The reality is, though, that in-store is often when a product is first discovered or where a brand might enter the consideration set. And so conversion has somewhat been that default because historically in-store has been synonymous with promotion or a price point or a coupon, which has a much more kind of short-term based impact. But I love Andrew Lipsman's quote on the right-hand side because there really is an opportunity to do effective branding. And for anybody that hasn't followed Andrew's at Insider Intelligence, and he's been a big evangelizer for digital in-store being kind of the next part of this retail media wave. And he talks about the fact that in-store digital media, yes, it's got the opportunity to drive sales performance, but the bigger opportunity is really on the brand advertising side. And that's where we see kind of a lot of digital in-stores growth coming from. So, if you kind of summarize, where digital in-store is today, digital in-store ultimately blends, from my perspective, the contextual relevance and mass reach that retail media provides, the targeting and ease of transacting that digital media provides, and the stopping power that digital out-of-home has always had with really high impact creative. And those three things kind of blending together is why we feel really confident digital in-store will be a force to be reckoned with, as an ad channel over the coming months and years. So with that, we do have a couple of predictions in terms of some of the things that we do see kind of coming in 2023. And so I'm going to bring up this slide again, which shows this convergence of retail media, and digital out-of-home. And at some level, the way I think about this is, I think digital in-store media's greatest strength is also at some level its greatest weakness. Because it has attributes of retail media, digital out-of-home, you can even layer in CTV. Our hypothesis is similar to how agencies and brands have had to rethink how they approach retail media. That likely is going to have to occur for the digital in-store world. Being really kind of transparent today, you've got a lot of people kind of trying to figure out where should it be bought, right? Is it, it can be bought programmatically. Does it sit with the programmatic team? Well, it looks a lot like digital out-of-home. Should it sit there? How does it play with retail media? And what we've seen is, I think the most progressive brands and agencies recognize that there's incredible value for in-store media. And so they've found ways to, to overcome these internal barriers, to be able to kind of remove some of the internal friction to buy something and to execute something that really does have the opportunity to be able to build brands. And so I think that's something that's going to have to continue to happen for this area of the media ecosystem to begin to scale. The other piece is, if you step back and look at one of the primary challenges that retail media has had, it's really been fragmentation, where brands and agencies are kind of forced to become with what's become dozens of different retail media platforms, all with their own walled gardens. And so as much as I think brands and agencies really appreciate the value of retail media, it's become difficult to be able to execute and manage when you have to work across so many different partners. And so we do believe that digital in-store has an opportunity to be a lot simpler, where it can kind of benefit from this network effect. And the way that will occur is being able to transact programmatically through a brand's preferred DSP that will allow the aggregation of retailers and audiences through a single buy, and really we think can help catapult digital in-store to that next level. So with that, I'd love to hand it off to Nolan to talk a little bit more about ways to be able to plan effective campaigns with all that we have learned within the space. Nolan, you want to take it away?
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Mike. And hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining. Mike, if you want to kick it off by just going to the next slide, we can start there. So I really want to start with the questions that we should be asking ourselves when we're planning these types of campaigns to execute in store. It's been no shock to anyone, I think, that if you look at advertising trends, when a new media really starts to pick up speed, you get a lot of entrants into that market trying to capitalize on the fact that there is a lot of renewed interest. And I think the in-store space is no stranger to that. So part of that is really thinking about the quantity versus quality examples that we have currently in the marketplace. And I think that's a great place to start. You want to think about, obviously, you want scale for your campaign and you want reach, but you also want to make sure that you have quality inventory that you're looking at. As we know, across the entire advertising landscape, no two medias are exactly the same, and they won't have the same impact. And so it's really important to think about that quality and quantity, especially as you're looking at open exchanges and areas like that. It's really important that you're looking at, okay, what kind of display am I buying in the in-store environment? How is that going to impact the consumers that are going through there? And what makes that network a high quality network? Areas that we get a lot of feedback on in terms of quality is dwell time, right? Like, what's the opportunity that a customer is going to be very captive and is going to be actually looking at these displays that are there? Another example of that would be where it's located in the store. Obviously, you can have different messaging based on where it's at in the actual physical store, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure that they're premium placements that are going to be in front of consumers and that consumers are going to have a high propensity to see. With that as well, like, you're going to want to be thinking about where you're launching the campaigns and are they fitting those right places, not only from a geolocation perspective, but also in store. And again, because of the fragmentation of the marketplace right now of in-store environment, there's a lot of different ways that you can fully leverage each of those touch points with consumers. And as the space continues to grow, you're going to see a lot of opportunity to reach customers during different points in their shopping journey and have creative that touches to each of those points as well. And then really, we have three different ways that we're trying to effectively reach your target audience. So one is obviously deprecation of cookies is all over the place right now. Everyone's talking about it. You're having some DSPs even come up with solutions on that. And for us, there's a big opportunity to reach these audiences with personalized campaigns without that. And a way to do that is to leverage data partners that have the ability to use things like mobile device IDs to understand what kind of audiences are going through these locations. A lot of our DSP partners have access to this data in general, and most of the DSPs in the spaces do. Others will have their own proprietary software or work with a third party that's able to have those device IDs that they're working with. And that allows you to effectively target really granularly. Not only are you getting things like, location, age, race, gender, you're also getting lifestyle choices, household income, preferences. You can even get things like music taste. It's all of these very interesting opportunities to reach this household audiences as you're going through and targeting your campaign. And then really the third is there's a really big opportunity here to create contextual content that makes sense to the consumer. I think one of the biggest opportunities for in-store media and other areas outside of the home in general are really that you can talk about the environment that you're in, because you know what that contextual relevance is. You know that someone is entering that store to go shopping for that first time that day. You know that someone is standing in line waiting in checkout line. You know that someone's at a cooler. Like, you have all these opportunities to really be playful with that creative and break the fourth wall, so to speak, to really reach that consumer effectively. And this is an example of a campaign that utilizes this perfectly. It talks about losing a place in line, and no, I don't think they're expecting anyone to actually like go out and make a beeline for the cheese aisle, but really it's this kind of creative that stands out to someone as they're standing there and gets them to think about this a little bit differently. It also has the opportunity to talk about consumers a different way to use products. So for example, this is like showing a actual product that they're using. It's not the actual product that they're selling, but it incorporates that product into like a recipe, for example, or a use case for it. And there's a big opportunity to reach these shoppers that is going to stand out across other creatives as well. And judging off of that as well, I mean, there's a big opportunity to really reach the audience that is going through the in-store environment. So talking about household decision makers actually going into the in-store environment, it's huge. Just to use us as a data point, for example, we have 98% of our audience directly influences decisions beyond just what they purchase for groceries, but where they bank, what kind of credit card they're going to use, what kind of shows they're going to watch, what insurance product they have, what kind of car they're going to buy. And what's interesting is that you see, especially in the grocery space, you see a big loyalty to the grocery shopper of where they're going to go. But at the same time, you're also seeing a transitory audience that is going and making errands runs all across the different types of retail environments that are in an actual community. So you're looking at big box visitation, you're looking at mall visitation, you're looking at gas station visitation, because you're reaching that core audience of household decision makers. And when you're leveraging campaigns in an in-store environment, it's important to remember that. And we actually have some examples of how brands that are non-endemic to the space have leveraged that environment itself. So to use another example here, you have America's Tire, which is a discount tire affiliate, really talking about the geolocation targeting around their locations to impact that community, but also keeping in mind, what is the shopper going to do after they're in the in-store environment? For this one, they're going to go right to their car, right? If you're in an environment that maybe isn't just downtown New York, you're probably going to get in your vehicle and go travel somewhere. So this is an example of a campaign that's trying to utilize that contextual relevance to say, hey, we want to influence that shopper's mindset right before they go and enter their vehicle, while also using geolocation targeting to make sure that it's relevant to the customers that we're trying to reach. And then beyond that, I think there's a big opportunity again to really leverage your content for where it makes the most sense. I think brand advertising is obviously very impactful, and the in-store environment is a great opportunity to leverage that. But you also have the opportunity to use different items here, like recipes, for example, like very contextually relevant. You know that household shopper is entering this store, and you have that influence to influence that purchase decision. Or trivia, fun facts, gripping content that's going to get the consumer to actually want to engage with it, I think is really important for the in-store environment. And you're seeing a lot of that in the online space as well. And the in-store space is no different. Content is definitely king. Yeah, go ahead, Mike. And really for the in-store environment, as Mike had mentioned before, where you kind of live in this matrix of a bunch of different ad mediums coming together, measuring is very similar to what you're seeing in other spaces. And really the idea of that is obviously, number one, you want to make sure that you're determining the objective for what you want. If you want brand awareness, then you want to leverage the opportunities to test that with brand lift studies or other opportunities with survey data, items like that. And then you can really leverage that targeting to make sure you're reaching that shopper that you want to reach, reaching that consumer that you want to reach, reaching high propensity audiences based on what your brand's objectives are and what their target audience is. What's great about the space is obviously programmatic is taking off in the in-store media space. And for the opportunity to reach them, you can leverage most major DSPs to actually access this in-store media space. So it's very similar to planning your current campaigns that you're already working on. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's a lot of different metrics you can look at. You can look at sales lift, you can look at brand lift, you can look at engagement. There's a lot of different opportunities to be able to measure the in-store environment. And you're seeing brands both in the endemic and non-endemic space use that to make the most out of their campaigns. And all of this, of course, while third-party cookies are not a necessity. So, hosting this webinar, we want to talk about the in-store environment. Obviously, we have to be a little self-serving here and tell you what the future holds for us. So for this year, we really want to focus on our full store expansion. So we've started that with the acquisition of MediaWorks, which is a company that has entrance displays And we'll be rolling that out over areas of our network coming in 2023. But for us, we really have a vision of being a full store solution for our retail partners and our advertising partners. That it can include a lot of different areas. Areas that we're focused on is areas like checkout, self-checkout, entrance, pharmacy, bakery, and deli. I mean, center store, there's a lot of different opportunities to expand across the store itself. And this, as I mentioned before, we acquired a company called MediaWorks. And so I'm proud to announce that this is going to be our first entrance into the expansion outside of checkout. For those of you that partner with us, you know that we have extensive coverage with checkout displays across the country. This allows us to now tackle the entrance of the store, which is feedback that we've gotten from, I'm sure, most of you on this call. What's great about this is that we're really focused on items that can be utilized by the customer. So for example, here you have a sanitization station. So someone is able to go in and take a sanitizer tissue and wipe their cart down. And for us, we really want to make sure that these are reasons that customers are going to go there. Another example of this could be one that's using circulars, so like the coupons and stuff like that, and have the opportunity to reach customers at the entrance itself. We're looking at checkout and self-checkout as an expansion line for us. As stores continue to adapt to a broadened self-checkout model, we want to make sure that we're reaching customers there as well. And we think that pharmacy is a huge opportunity here. And our retail partners are asking for this stuff. They're asking for expansion across the store. They realize the opportunity that they have in the in-store media. And we want to make sure that we're able to tackle brands regardless of where we're at in the shopper journey.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, our goal is to be able to partner with our brand and agency partners with consultative recommendations about the best ways to be able to engage audiences throughout kind of the most relevant areas of the store. So with that kind of concludes the overall content portion, but we'd love to open it up to any questions that you might have on your mind. Micah, I'll defer to you.
Hey, thanks, Mike and Nolan. We have a couple of questions here. Mike, the first one's for you. You mentioned earlier in the presentation that there is a bit of confusion right now around where digital in-store fits in budgets. Can you elaborate a bit more on the type of buyer who typically invest in grocery TV?
Yeah, and Nolan, feel free to add on since you've been on the front lines in so many of these conversations. What we are finding is it really kind of, I think, runs the gamut. So, the vast majority of our volume is transacted programmatically via a private marketplace or a PMP. So often, it'll originate with programmatic teams, but we certainly see a lot of digital out-of-home buyers. We see a lot of digital, quote unquote, traditional digital media buyers, whether it be those that are buying online video, whether it be CTV or whether it be mobile. So it kind of runs the gamut based upon the brands that we're working with. But Nolan, do you want to provide any additional?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Mike. A lot of our buyers are from the digital OLV space. As Mike mentioned, the majority of our business actually comes through PMP deals that are transacted programmatically. But you're also seeing an increasing amount of people that are covering this inner between space, right? Like between like the video everywhere and what that looks like. And so you're having a lot of conversations with a lot of these teams together to figure out how to fund it. But the majority of it currently is coming from digital teams, obviously some out-of-home folks as well. Just depends on the brand itself.
Yeah, I mean, because ultimately our point of view is it should be an extension of an overarching media campaign. If you're delivering media, on TV or in print or in digital out-of-home or in mobile and reaching shoppers across that journey, we want to make sure that we work with you as effectively as possible to translate that, into the in-store environment.
Awesome. We have one more question. There's been a lot of news lately around economic uncertainty and how that's affecting the ad industry and consumer behavior. Can you share more about how this affects brick and mortar stores or more grocery specifically?
Yeah, do you want me to take that, Mike?
Go for it.
Cool. Yeah, so it's a great question. For us, I think that the grocery and the in-store environment has a really unique opportunity to capitalize on the current macroeconomic environment. The number one spending when time gets tough, the number one spending that customers cut is travel. The number two spending is eating out and dining out in restaurants. So I think that as you're going to have customers that are a little bit more cost conscious, you're going to see more frequent trips to the grocery stores themselves as customers are cutting budgets like eating out and travel in areas like that. So I think there is a really interesting, as I mentioned, opportunity to reach these customers as they're going through our store. And I do think that we're, uniquely positioned for that.
Well, somehow we finished this pretty much right on time, as it's 29 after the hour. And so just wanted to thank everybody for joining. It's amazing to see such a cross-section of different types of partners that I think does speak to the power and the influence that digital in-store will continue to have in the overall media world. And we are incredibly excited and enthusiastic about the position grocery TV is going to play. And we'd love to have deeper conversations with you in terms of what this can mean for your brands and advertisers. So thanks so much. Appreciate it. We've got our contact information so you know where to reach us. But in the meantime, have a great rest of your afternoon. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.